So I'm not sure if you guys could tell, but I'm a massive JoJo fan. So much so, I'm even making an entire fan game over on Roblox. Go check out the streams from both me and Golden, both here on YouTube and Twitch for the devlogs there. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. I'm here to talk about something I'm extremely excited for, and I only have a very limited amount of time to talk about. So I decided to make this impromptu and just put it out there. And that is the jojolands. JoJo Part 9. Now, if you're not a manga reader for JoJo, don't worry, you don't have to leave just yet. I will not be putting spoilers in this video until later on, and when there is, I will give a warning. So I've been watching a lot of videos in my own hype, just analyzing and predicting things about this protagonist and the other things we've already had revealed to us about the JoJolands. I've decided to make my own version of that, and that's what this video is for you today. This is going to be my predictions and my analysis of everything we've been shown so far. The very first piece of promotional art we were ever given is this first promotional image right here, which basically just gave us a date and the name, which we had already known. And it showed us this really colored over sketch. Now there is a version of it without the color, so I'm going to show you that while we analyze it. So yeah, you can see much more clearly without the color that we have a ship on the water heading towards volcanic islands. And we will know from later promotional art that there are other signs that this is very clearly a tropical environment. There are a lot of things pointing to like Hawaii. Early things about New Guinea were there, but I don't think that New Guinea has palm trees. I could be wrong. I have not really fact-checked that. And I'm obviously not from New Guinea, if you couldn't tell. But from my knowledge, New Guinea doesn't have palm trees. Please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Anyway, that's pretty much everything you can glean from this first image, and everybody basically just figured it's probably going to have something to do with the water. Next image we got was this image, which was Araki's annual New Year, like, poster? I don't really know what it is, but he always does these every New Year, like a piece of art, including the main JoJo protagonist, and the animal that represents, I believe, the Chinese New Year, which this year was a bunny. That's why we got the JoJo bunny, as a lot of people called it. But inside of the bunny, you can clearly see our first look at our new Part 9 protagonist. And he definitely looked interesting here. Since we didn't have coloring, could barely see his face, we basically just had slight hairstyle. Wow. We basically just had slight hairstyle. You can't really tell a lot about him, but it still had people hype as hell. And the main thing people were speculating at this point is like, does the bunny have something to do with the stand? The answer is obviously no. If it does, that will definitely surprise me, but this bunny is just the New Year bunny. Though we can still go calling it the JoJo bunny, I don't mind that. We can now move on to the next, much bigger to talk about page. Our first real look at the JoJo protagonist. This is the first shot we had of him looking at us, where we can clearly see he has a star earring. We could see his hair cut a little bit better, where we could see like he has got bangs in front of his face. He has bangs in front of his face. And something about his face, it reminds me of Giorno mixed with Josuke. And I mean Josuke from Part 8 specifically. That said, we do see he's got some kind of collar going on here. We can see a little bit of the environment in the background, but it's barely much. There's not a huge amount to tell from him here, but he looks very interesting, and you can definitely imagine him with his color scheme looking probably pretty good. Though a lot of people at this point, myself included, were pretty unsure on this design. Though, the next images we would get would pretty prominently change that opinion, at least for me. So, the next image we got is kind of the most to talk about. So we're going to be here for a second. This image. This came from a Japanese video posted on YouTube. There was some kind of promotional event going on in Japan where a physical piece of art, a mural, was depicted that showed literally every JoJo part flowing into each other. It's actually a really beautiful piece of art. I'm showcasing a little bit of it here, but I have the original video linked down in the description if you guys want to check it for yourself. It's actually pretty awesome. But right at the end here, you can see it showcases a little bit of Part 9, including our main protagonist and some other characters we've never seen before, and in the time of making this video, have not seen again yet. And there's only 2 days until the part drops, so unlikely we'll see them again before the actual beginning of the part with Chapter 1. But here we can clearly see, again, the date, the iconic "to be continued," referencing the fact that, you know, this is going to not be everything in Part 9. And then our first really good look at the actual, like, outfit of our main JoJo, which I think looks pretty good here, but it looks kind of weird. The next image we get of him, spoiler alert, the last promotional material we'll get in this video, I think he looks way better. I actually really love his drip, but in this specific image, he kind of looks like a misfit Power Ranger with a hoodie. I don't really know what's going on here. Like, that thing on his chest looks like, look at that thing on his chest. It looks like this guy, but with wings attached to him. It does not look like what it'll look like later, which is a heart, by the way. But that said, I still love the drip later on. Though he has a weird belt going on. What I love, though, is the earring. And because we've been able to see both sides now, you can clearly see that we're going to see both sides of his face, and that he has 2 earrings. And red, right to left, it says Joestar, which I think is awesome. And another thing people I saw pointing out in comment sections on other videos I watched is that the O and the J together, if you really look at it, it kind of looks like a 9, which just is a great reference to the fact this is Part 9, you know? Anyway, as we have and will be talking a lot about the main JoJo, let's move on to the other characters who we only get this one image to talk about. So looking at the second most prominent in this image, who's almost certainly the character who will be, like, second most important. I say this because of the one other promo image, which we didn't really look at, which just kind of shows that these 2 characters, we can presume, on the boat. I kind of forgot about that one until just now, in the middle of making this video. But there's not a lot to analyze there except for her. And we're going to analyze her here. So we do see in that image, just flashing it on screen right now, that her hair does look a little bit like Hermes from the back. But from the front, she looks a lot like Jolene. This does warrant a lot of the theories about there being twin Joestars. But that said, we've seen this specific guy promoted so heavily that even if there is 2 Joestars like that, I think this is our JoJo. You know what I mean? She does look interesting. She's not wearing a lot. That's one thing I can say. But one thing I saw somebody point out is the interesting similarity of that tattoo on her arm. It looks a lot like the one that the Native Americans had in Part 7. So she may be related to that somehow, but that is just a stretch here. You never know. If not, I am curious what it is and why it is in her design. I also can see that it looks like something in her hair, like a hat or something in her, like a braid or something like that, that would be just attached in her hair, is like covered by the clouds. I think they're kind of hiding something from her design. And that interests me because you never know what it could be. We also don't really know what's on her lower half. But that said, I do think this will be the duo companion of our main JoJo. Moving on, we've got right above her this strange woman, I presume. Kind of genderly ambiguous, but they definitely have breasts. They're holding a phone and they kind of just look odd. Usually Araki draws these sort of characters when they're not important, but they're in this mural and they're pretty large, so I have a feeling they're at least going to be important early on. Maybe they'll just be a named character who doesn't really matter that much in the long run, but they're definitely going to be there, you know? Maybe some kind of comedy relief alongside the guy over here on the right who we're about to move on to. Anyway, I don't have a lot to say about her. She just looks strange, though her clothes do kind of continue to give me the Hawaii vibes that the palm trees at the top give. That said, moving on to the guy on the right, a lot of people have been comparing him to other things, mostly because of his full bodysuit, but something about the hair sticking out just has always been reminding me of Dio. Like, specifically Diego. And a lot of people are theorizing that there are going to be some kind of connections to Dio's legacy or something in this. If that's the case, this guy might be it, but he looks pretty goofy, man. I don't know. We'll have to see. That said, he's wearing some kind of full body suit, making a strange face, eating something. This is just not a complimenting shot for this man. But I definitely feel like that means he's going to be a comedy relief. Moving on, we've got a couple of side characters, almost certainly, because they're very small and they don't have a lot of detail. But take note of the difference in skin tones. That is not common in Japan or over in the New Guinea area too heavily. I don't know about New Guinea, actually. But definitely not if they were going to do an island off of Japan. It could still happen, but it's not as likely. That, alongside the palm trees and a lot of other evidence we've gotten, leans me towards thinking this may actually be in Hawaii. At least at the start of the part. I do feel like they might travel in this part, but we'll get to that when we get to my predictions and stuff. Anyway, we've got this cowboy-looking guy. I think he'll play some kind of antagonistic role, but you never know. Behind him, we've got this guy that looks a little bit like a second-rate Polnareff. I don't know if these guys are really going to be important. They're pretty small. I think it's just giving us more to look at. But I think somebody who will be important is this guy at the top here. Now, a lot of people say it gives Emporio vibes just because of the hat. And I'm kind of going to have to agree. He kind of looks like a grown-up Emporio to me. But you never know. This could literally just be any other guy with a hat. And I almost hope he's somebody new. But seeing as how this is probably going to have a lot of mirrors for Part 5 and Part 6, I could see it being like the alternate universe Emporio. Because Emporio was pretty freaking important to the end of the entire original universe, if you've forgotten. We can now move on from this image to our last image today. And our newest image. Probably the last we'll get before the part drops, but you never know. I didn't even think we'd have this many. And that is this image. A much, much cleaner shot of our main Joestar, where you can now clearly see the Joestar earrings making the Joestar thing depicted from right to left across him. And this, from what I've heard, don't quote me on this because I have not done the research to confirm it, but from everything I have been told, this is an official coloring. Which means we have a Joestar with gray hair, a weird, awesome hoodie. That heart thing looks way better now, and it's definitely a reference to the heart on Giorno's chest. Honestly, this character just gives me a lot of Giorno vibes, which makes me think he's definitely going to be the alternate universe Giorno, mostly. And we have been told a small line in one of these posters that this story is about a boy who comes into immense wealth. And you know, that sounds more like Giorno than any other character with his, like, crime life. This could literally be like Giorno, but with literally more selfish intentions. Which sounds exactly like what Giorno would be in the alternate universe. If you think about it, Johnny was literally Jonathan, but more selfish. He was a guy who would literally kill people. Like, he didn't hesitate. While Jonathan, obviously, was the gentleman. But a lot of principles of their characters stayed the same. The same is really true for Josuke in, well, the original Josuke. Not really Jotaro, who he can also be compared to, but specifically him in the original Josuke. Josuke, Gappy as we like to call him, versus Josuke. Josuke was brutal, man. Like, Josuke would leave people alive most of the time, even if he did leave him in horrific ways, like Angelo being a rock. But Josuke has one of the highest kill counts in the series. That is all I can say without spoilers. Is he has one of the highest kill counts in the series. If you consider that a spoiler, I'm sorry, but I'm not telling you who he kills. He doesn't kill everybody or anything, so it's still not a spoiler. I'm just saying, he's kind of brutal. It fits the theme of all these new protagonists being slightly more brutal and reimagined versions of old characters. If this guy is basically just brutal, slightly criminal Giorno. I mean, I honestly think Giorno would be more criminal than whoever this guy is, based on my own predictions right now. But that doesn't mean this guy doesn't have more selfish intentions. Because you have to remember, while Giorno wanted to become the mob boss, he did it because of wanting to get drugs off the street. Which is just strange, if you ask me. But you know, good intentions. This guy's probably going to be kind of the opposite. He's probably going to go about something good through bad intentions. That's what I would imagine. It'll be a flip. It'll be a mirror. That's what I kind of hope for. That'd be cool. I think it'd be cool. But there's a lot Araki could do, and I think whatever he does, we'll enjoy it. But looking at this, he kind of looks like he has some kind of life vest on, mixed with like a raincoat, which really, really, really fits well with some of the theories going around. We know that this is most likely going to be a water-based part. So if this is like a life jacket, it would make sense. Because, you know, if this is a water-based part and they're on the water a lot, there's going to be at least one point when their ship sinks. I basically will put money on it, to be honest. So having something like that could be literally like a utility. When it comes to the raincoat part, you would think it's just for stylistic purposes, right? But there's a big theory going around the community right now. You see his freaking collar. Look at the collar. That says November. Almost every time we see little hints like that on a character design, it points to the stand. Think about the way that the wings on Giorno's collar, which, by the way, if this is an alternate Giorno, makes this even more fitting, connecting to his stand's wings on his design. A lot of that has happened in JoJo in the past. It saying November there may be a part of his stand's name. And one of the biggest theories going around right now, which I'm sure if you're a big JoJo fan you've heard, is that his stand will be November Rain from Guns N' Roses. That would be awesome. That is an awesome song, and we already know that Araki is pulled from that album in references before. So it's very likely, really. And if it has something to do with water, while they're on the water, and his design has a raincoat, and a life jacket, that all just fits too well. And going into slightly later stuff, where we're going to be talking about my predictions and stuff, if Joe Skate, Gappy, comes back as some kind of side or mentor or even enemy character, it would be very fitting, because he has his sailor suit while sailing around, and this new JoJo has his raincoat life jacket thing. I could honestly see the two of them having a stand battle. I could see it happening, but that's going into very theoretical territory, which we're going to get into very soon. Matter of fact, I don't think I have anything else to say about this image. So we're going to go into my predictions. Now, this is where we're going to get into spoiler territory for part 7 and 8. If you have not read those parts and do not want spoilers, leave now. Because I'm about to go over something that the fellow YouTube channel Jokakaka did, which was creating bingo cards for our part 9 predictions. I'm going to basically go over my bingo card to give you my predictions for part 9. And I'll also tell you how these new leaks and promos have affected my opinions. So this is my bingo card. The free space is very obviously part 9 being released. It's gonna happen. We got 2 days. I get that in 2 days. And I will be crossing this off actively. It won't be anywhere public, I don't think, but going over this. From the top left, reading left to right, and top to bottom. First thing on the bingo board, we've got mostly island settings. I would bet my money on this. Okay, we've seen only islands being advertised. And we know that this is more than likely going to be the sailing part. I just almost certainly guarantee you it'll be mostly islands. I could be wrong, but everything we've looked at points to. Next thing, someone has parent issues. This one is a little bit not cemented, but it meaning literally anybody could have parent issues is very obviously like a JoJo thing. Like, think back to part 1. George didn't like how Jonathan would eat. Part 2, his dad was dead. Part 3, his dad was gone. Part 4, his dad wasn't in his life most of his time. Part 5, do I even need to explain? Part 6, the literal whole plot revolves around father issues. It's like a big thing for literally almost every JoJo. So even if it's not the main JoJo, someone is going to have parent issues. This JoJo will likely have one parent not present or be an orphan or something weird. Even Josuke technically has parent issues because he doesn't actually have parents, and the one person he identifies as a mother figure he needs to help and save the life of. So yeah, parent issues are a big thing in JoJo. Next thing, Rockhuman's return. I know a lot of people don't want this to happen. I don't really know where I sit on that. I could kind of go either way, but I do think it will happen. I don't think he introduced them and gave them so much lore just to leave them behind. I do think he'll do something different with them though. Like, he'll either reveal something new about them, or we'll have a good one or something. Who knows? JoJo's a Rockhuman? No, I doubt it. Anyway, moving on. Reference to 2010's artists. This one is pretty much a given. I say this because every single part, he's kind of pushed what he's going to do a little bit further. And the parts that are closer to modern times, he almost always uses closer to modern time references. And I do have a strong belief that this part will be pretty much modern day. Because he can't go too far ahead, or he'll have future JoJo. And that's a little weird. He could do it. I wouldn't put it past him, but I don't really think that's what he's going to do. And I don't think it'll be a prequel. Mostly just because he's never really went back before like that. It just doesn't sound like something he'd do. The next thing, another food song. What this is referencing is something that's happened through part 7 and 8. In 7, we had pizza mozzarella. Great. Amazing moment. Can't wait for it to be animated one day. And in part 8, we had the I Love Fries song. These are both not exactly amazing songs, but they're amazing moments. And I almost guarantee you there's going to be another stupid food song in part 9. Most likely sung by the main JoJo or his JoBro. A Brando descendant. I am slightly regretting putting this on this, but that's only because I feel like it might not happen. I think there's a good chance that somewhere out there in this world we will see someone who is a Brando descendant. They may be an enemy, they may be a friend, I don't know. But we will probably have a Brando or someone just confirmed to be a descendant of Diego. Or at least his own bloodline. Maybe Diego had a brother or something, you never know. Next thing, Fumi appears or is mentioned. Now this one I kind of regret putting on here because I didn't realize it beforehand, but we've already had it 100% confirmed that the new JoJo is biologically related in some way to Joseph Joestar, which is Fumi. So I think it's pretty much a given that he will appear or be mentioned because we have to find out how he's related to him. So this one I can pretty much cross off already and kind of regret putting on here, but, you know, it's already there, so it is what it is. Josuke returns. I think this is very, 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 very likely. I don't know if he'll be in a mentor role or whatnot, like I mentioned before, but I think he will come back, because his story arc wasn't over. He never saved Holly. And he was still looking for the jokakaka, which happens to be at subtropical islands. You know, the same environment Part 9 is confirmed to take place in. Oh, and the dude has a sailor suit on. And we never saw him sail. It just makes sense. Okay? It just makes sense. Now this next one, is the thing most people will probably think I'm kind of crazy for even putting on here. In Part 8, there was a character who a lot of people think was an example of the whole thing of miracles and calamity in JoJo, which I'm not going to even begin to try to explain everything about that to you, but there was a baby born who apparently washed out to sea and survived, but came back. Nobody knew who he was, but he had jewels. It was meant to represent, in a lot of people's opinion, how things can go awful, calamity, and then there's still a blessing among that. Sort of like a silver lining thing, which all fits with the themes of equivalent exchange in Part 8, which I won't fully go into yet, but, you know, one day, if you guys want to hear my analysis of Part 8, I could do it. But I do believe that Bling Bling Baby will be mentioned, or at least if it is just a miracle like that, maybe that'll be slightly more pushed in a more clear way. Or he'll be a straight-up character, which I kind of think could happen, but I know I'm kind of really shooting in the dark with this one. Now the next thing, I think JoJo will be spoken. Just the word JoJo. Somebody will call him JoJo, or he'll have been called JoJo as a kid, or he'll reference himself as JoJo, or a character will say the word JoJo. I say this because Part 9 is most likely going to be the last part. And we started with a character called JoJo. I think we'll get it at least one more time, where something says JoJo, straight up. Because it would be the best callback, you know? Now, I don't think it'll play a big part, but the Holy Corpse I do think will be mentioned. That's pretty much all there is to say about that. It was mentioned in Part 8, and was relevant, but not super relevant. And obviously was extremely important to Part 7. I think it'll be similar to how it was in Part 8, maybe even less so. Watch me be wrong, and the Holy Corpse is the entire concept of the plot, but you never know. The next thing. This one's pretty much a given too, since it's been in both Part 7 and 8. Spin. I think Spin will come back in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just a stand upgrade, sort of like what happened with Josuke with Soft and Wet Go Beyond. Anything, it doesn't matter. Spin will probably exist again as something someone is utilizing in some way, even if it is subconsciously in this universe. Like, we already know Spin exists. That's a guarantee. But I mean somebody will be utilizing it in some way, even if they don't know. The next thing. An unconventional stand. This is sort of like what they did with Shakedown Road in Part 8. A stand that literally didn't even have a user. There could be other variations of this where it's not necessarily just a stand that doesn't have a user, or maybe it's a vehicle that's a stand. Who knows what it is? Araki could get really creative, but that's pretty much the whole theory here, is that I think he'll just get really creative and do something very different we haven't seen before. It won't be a traditional punchy ghost. It won't be a traditional, like, triggered activation, long range, any of that. It'll be something different. I mean, this is probably the final part. He's gonna go out on a bang, I'm sure. The next thing. Characters get intoxicated. I believe this has happened in almost every part, at least briefly. A character would drink or do anything, really, that makes them get inebriated in some way. I believe this will happen again. I'm only saying this because I needed something to fill out on the spot, but I also thought it's kind of likely. Characters survive absurdly. This very specifically references, like, Josuke Part 4 level feats, where people should have died, and they just are alive. Now, this is very up to debate if and when it'll get crossed off, but JoJo's, we know this is gonna happen. Like, come on. Bite Mark explained. I definitely think this one could be a shot in the dark too. See, in Part 8 at the very, very beginning, we see bite marks on a few different characters, most prominently Josuke, right around his birthmark. We have no explanation for what that was. There's a lot of theories and implications, but there's no direct explanation, and it felt like a drop plot point. I hope it'll be explained somehow. Maybe it won't, but I hope so. Traveling, sailing around. This is me theorizing that it'll be a traveling part rather than staying in one location. That's pretty much all I think. I think a lot of the promo materials have implied that, and I think there's good reason to believe it. Young JoJo, somewhere between the ages of 15 to 22. We've only had one JoJo that doesn't technically fit this age range, and that is Josuke 8, Gappy, because his age is really fucking complicated to even talk about. He could technically be considered 1, to be honest. But I think this is extremely likely because literally every other JoJo has fallen within that range, and even Josuke falls physically within that range. An ally starts as an enemy. This happened in almost every part at least once. So I'm almost certain we'll get a stand fight between two characters, and then that character will become an ally to the main JoJo. Just one of those JoJo things. The next thing, someone semi-important will die off screen. This is mostly a reference to... This is something that's happened a few times in JoJo, where a character will just not get screen time, or they'll get like one tiny little arc. I think it was most well handled with the way they handled Johnny, but it still kind of falls into this. Johnny had a bit of an arc around his death, but he still didn't really get to be a character or have any explanation of what he did outside of what happened before he died, which I kind of consider a mostly off-screen death. There are also deaths which straight up happen off-screen and are only mentioned. Like, this could be something as much as Johnny from Part 8, or something like, yeah, so, by the way, Josuke died. Just that. You know, you never know. And it doesn't have to be, obviously, a JoJo, but that's why I say semi-important. It could be, like, any character. My next and one of my last theories, it'll have a group, similar to Part 3 or 5 or 6, where there's, like, 3 or 4, maybe even 5 people who travel together on whatever the JoJo journey is. This kind of goes hand in hand with the thing that it's a traveling part, though this could get completely disputed because there's a big chance that this will just be a duo. Araki seems to really like doing duos in this new world. The new world seems to have duos every part. 7 had Gyro and Johnny, 8 had Josuke and Yasuho, and now 9 is probably going to have main JoJo and that girl that was next to her. But I'm still holding out hope for a JoJo part where we have a full group again. More friendly stands is always more fun to me. The next, one of the most important to me theories, and the main reason I think Josuke even needs to return, we need Holly closure. Even if she's the character who dies off screen. We need to know what the fuck happened. She didn't get saved. It's just that simple. We need closure on Holly's character. The next thing, I think Yasuo will return or at least be mentioned. Even if she's not there and Josuke's there, we'll know where she is. We'll know the state of their relationship with one another. We'll learn a little bit about what happened with Yasuo. At least I hope so, because she was literally the second most important character last part. And then, my final theory in this video, before JoJolands comes out in a couple days, and we get to watch and see if any of this comes true. 2 or more people will die who are allies. This goes a little bit hand in hand with my JoJo group theory, because in most parts where there is a group, a lot of that group ends up dead. And those parts are usually the ones that have high stakes. With this being likely the final part, I do think its final confrontation will be high stakes. Now, that said, Part 7 was pretty freaking high stakes, and it did not have a JoJo group. It did, though, have 2 or more ally deaths. So, it fits. and I do think this is very likely to happen. Anyway, that is my entire bingo board. Credit to jokakaka for creating the idea and inspiring the community to do this. It's a very fun thing. Very excited to see if I can get a bingo or if I'm just gonna read some awesome JoJo and watch things not happen the way I thought they would, which will still be awesome. That said, that's all we have to look at for JoJo Part 9 so far. The JoJolands has me so freaking hyped, guys. I've never made a video this quickly, okay? I just got thoughts in my head, was constantly watching these videos and decided I was going to make one for myself because I had 2 days to do it. That's also why this video is going up the same day it was recorded, because I have no time, man. This part comes out in 2 days. That said, thank you guys very much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button. If you really like this video, be sure to smash that subscribe button. And as always, remember,
everything changes.